I heard the drill through my bedroom wall at 11:47 p.m. My son David was changing the locks on my front door while I pretended to sleep upstairs. What he didn't know was that I'd been awake for 3 hours, phone recording every sound, because tonight wasn't just about locks. Tonight was about teaching a 42-year-old man that stealing from your elderly father has consequences. The police would arrive in exactly 13 minutes, and the deed in my pocket would change everything. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 71 years old, and for the past 6 months I've been paying $1,200 monthly rent to live in the house I bought in 1996. The house my wife Carol and I raised our son in. The house where she died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer. The house that's still titled in my name, though my son and his wife Jennifer seem to have forgotten that crucial detail. But let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because you need to understand how a man ends up as a tenant in his own home. March 15th, 2021. The day Carol died. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath in our bedroom, the same room where we'd celebrated 43 anniversaries. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer had taken her in 8 brutal months. The doctors gave us the diagnosis in July 2020, and by March, she was gone. David and Jennifer came to the funeral. They stayed for 3 days, helped with arrangements, accepted condolences from neighbors, and then returned to their apartment in downtown Portland. I was alone in a 4-bedroom house that suddenly felt cavernous and empty. The grief was crushing. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget Carol was gone, reaching for her side of the bed only to find cold sheets. I stopped cooking real meals, lived on frozen dinners and coffee. The house fell into disrepair. Dishes piled in the sink, mail accumulated unopened on the kitchen counter. I existed more than I lived. My neighbor Margaret Chen started checking on me. Margaret had been Carol's closest friend, and she'd seen me deteriorating. She'd bring casseroles I wouldn't eat and talk to me through the door when I wouldn't answer. Looking back, Margaret probably saved my life that first year. David called once a week, always on Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. The conversations were brief and uncomfortable. "How are you doing, Dad?" "I'm managing. Do you need anything?" "I'm fine." Neither of us knew how to bridge the distance between us. We'd never been particularly close, even before Carol died. She'd been the emotional glue holding our family together. But I wasn't completely lost. I had my work. Even in retirement, I kept my mind sharp. I'd spent 40 years as an electrical engineer, specializing in battery technology. 3 patents to my name, all related to lithium-ion charging systems. The royalties from those patents had been depositing into a separate investment account for 2 decades. Carol and I had lived modestly on my pension and Social Security, never touching that money. It was our safety net, our legacy for David and his family. By September 2021, that account held $2.1 million. David had no idea it existed. 5 months after Carol's funeral, David called with a proposition. It was a Thursday evening, not our usual Sunday schedule, which should have been my first warning. "Dad, Jennifer and I have been talking. Our lease is up next month, and we're looking at houses to buy. The market's crazy right now." "I've heard that," I said, stirring instant coffee at my kitchen table. The same table where Carol used to do crossword puzzles every morning. "Thing is, we need to save more for a down payment." I was thinking, you've got that big house, 4 bedrooms, and you're only using 1. I knew where this was going before he said it. "What if we moved in for a few months? Just until we find a place. We could help with maintenance, keep you company. Emma would love spending time with her grandfather. Emma, my 9-year-old granddaughter." I'd seen her maybe 6 times since Carol died. The idea of having her in the house hearing a child's laughter again filled a hollow space I hadn't acknowledged. "How long were you thinking?" I asked. 3, maybe 4 months tops, 6 at the outside, just until we save enough and find the right property." "What about rent?" "Rent?" David's tone shifted slightly. "Dad, we'd be helping you out. Keeping the place up. You wouldn't have to pay for yard work or repairs anymore. We'd handle all that. I should have insisted on a written agreement, should have set clear boundaries. But grief makes you stupid, and loneliness makes you desperate." I wanted my family close. I wanted to believe my son genuinely cared about my well-being. "Okay," I said. "When were you thinking of moving in?" "How about September 1st? We'll bring the essentials, keep most of our stuff in storage until we buy a place." They moved in on September 3rd, 2021. 2 days late because Jennifer was particular about hiring professional movers even though they were only bringing bedroom furniture and personal items. The moving truck pulled up at 10 a.m. and I watched 4 men carry in boxes labeled master bedroom, Jennifer's closet, David's office, and Emma's room. The master bedroom, my and Carol's bedroom, the room where she died. "Dad," David said, finding me in the kitchen, "Jennifer and I will take the master. It's the biggest, and we need the space. You don't mind moving to the guest room, right? It's still a nice size. I did mind. I minded very much. But I was 68 years old, grieving, and desperate to keep peace with my only child. So I moved my things to the guest room, while strangers carried my daughter-in-law's clothes into the space where my wife had taken her last breath. That first month wasn't terrible. Emma would knock on my door after school, and we'd work on puzzles together in what used to be Carol's craft room. Jennifer was pleasant when we crossed paths, though she spent most of her time redecorating. David worked long hours as a real estate agent, taking advantage of the hot market he'd mentioned. But small things started to bother me. Jennifer rearranged Carol's kitchen without asking, putting dishes in more logical places. David turned my garage workshop into storage for their stuff, boxing up my tools and projects. They started having dinner parties without including me, friends arriving at 7 p.m. while I ate a frozen meal in my room. "It's just easier this way, Dad," David explained when I mentioned feeling excluded. "Our friends are younger, different interests. You wouldn't enjoy the conversations anyway." By November, the 3 to 4 months timeline had evaporated. When I asked David about their house search, he'd wave it off. "Market's still crazy. We're waiting for things to stabilize." When I mentioned maybe looking at rental listings for them, Jennifer would say they were perfectly comfortable where they were, and change the subject. I started to realize I'd made a terrible mistake, but I didn't know how to undo it without creating a family war. So I stayed quiet, retreated further into my guest room, and hoped things would somehow work themselves out. They didn't work out. They got worse. 6 months after they moved in, everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening, March 8th, 2022. David knocked on my guest room door at 8:30 p.m., his face serious in a way that made my stomach drop. "Dad, we need to talk. Financial talk." I followed him downstairs to the kitchen, where Jennifer sat at the table with a laptop and a manila folder. The scene looked staged, rehearsed. This wasn't a spontaneous conversation. "Have a seat," David said, pulling out a chair for me like I was a visitor in my own home. Jennifer opened the folder and pulled out several printed pages. "Bob, we've been going over household expenses, utilities, property tax, insurance, general maintenance. The numbers are significant." She'd never called me Bob before. It had always been Mr. Mitchell, or just Dad after the wedding. The switch to my first name felt like a demotion. "I pay the property tax and insurance," I said. "That hasn't changed." "But utilities have tripled since we moved in," David countered. "Water, electricity, gas. Emma takes long showers. Jennifer needs her office heated during the day. These costs add up." Jennifer slid a spreadsheet across the table. It showed monthly utility bills with red highlighting on the increase column. Everything looked official and calculated. "We're not saying this is all on you," David continued, "but fair is fair. We're 3 people living here. You're 1 person. A proportional split makes sense." "What kind of split are you suggesting?" I asked carefully. "We've calculated it at $1,200 per month," Jennifer said. "That covers your portion of utilities, plus a contribution to property tax and insurance since we're maintaining the property. It's actually quite reasonable considering Portland rental market rates, $1,200 a month, to live in my own house." "This is my house," I said quietly. "I bought it in 1996. The deed has my name on it." "We know that, Dad." David's tone was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "But we're all living here. We're shouldering significant costs to keep this place running. Mom's been gone 2 years. It's time to think practically. Practically? The word tasted bitter. Look, Jennifer said, closing her laptop with a definitive click. We can keep subsidizing your living expenses, or we can establish a fair arrangement. We prefer fair. They waited for my response, both of them watching me with expressions that suggested this was non-negotiable. I looked around the kitchen, at Carol's dishes in their new, logical locations, at the table where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays for decades, at my son treating me like a tenant. I should have said no, should have told them to pack their things and leave immediately. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear of being alone again. Maybe it was weakness. Maybe it was curiosity about how far they'd actually go with this charade. I need to think about it, I said. Think fast, David replied. First payment's due April 1st. I went back to my guest room and sat on the bed that wasn't my bed, in the room that wasn't my room, in the house that was definitely my house. And I started thinking about something Carol used to say when I'd get upset about work problems. Robert, sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back immediately. It's watching people expose themselves and then striking when they least expect it. I pulled out my phone and created a new folder. Evidence. April 1st came. I paid the $1,200. I walked downstairs that morning and found David in the kitchen making coffee. Jennifer's coffee specifically. Organic fair trade beans she special ordered at $24 per pound. They'd replaced my $8 Folgers without asking. Morning, Dad? Sleep well? David asked, as casual as if we'd talked about the weather the night before, not rent extraction. I have something for you, I said, pulling out my checkbook. The same checkbook I'd used to pay mortgages and car loans and college tuition for decades. I wrote the check slowly, made the amount clear, $1,200. In the memo line, I wrote, Rent, April 2022. David watched me write that word, rent. Neither of us acknowledged how wrong it was. Thanks, Dad, he said, taking the check. This makes everything easier for everyone. Easier for everyone, as if extorting your elderly father somehow benefited the victim. But I wasn't just paying rent that morning. I was buying time. Time to observe, document, and plan. Because Carol was right about revenge being a dish best served cold, and I was just starting to prepare the meal. That afternoon, while David and Jennifer were both at work and Emma was at school, I went to the county recorder's office. I requested a certified copy of my property deed. The clerk handed it to me 20 minutes later, a legal document clearly showing Robert James Mitchell as the sole owner of 2847 Maple Grove Drive. Not David Mitchell, not Jennifer Mitchell, not even Robert Mitchell and David Mitchell. Just me. I made 3 copies. One went into my safe deposit box at First National Bank. One went to my attorney, Richard Torres, with specific instructions. If anything happens to me or if I'm suddenly declared incompetent, open this envelope immediately and call the police. The 3rd copy I kept in my locked briefcase, which I stored under my bed in the guest room. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. For the next 6 months, I paid $1,200 every first of the month, and every month I documented everything. My phone became my witness. I recorded conversations. Not secretly or illegally, Oregon is a one-party consent state, which meant as long as I was part of the conversation, I could record it legally. I just never mentioned I was recording. I photographed every check before handing it over, captured the rent memo line clearly, saved PDFs of my bank statements showing the monthly withdrawals, created a spreadsheet tracking every payment with dates, amounts, and receipt confirmations. But I also documented other things. The way they treated me had subtly shifted after that first rent payment. It was like paying them had made me less than family, more like help. May 18th recording, kitchen conversation, Jennifer complaining to David that I'd used her towels in the bathroom. I don't want to share towels with an old man. It's unhygienic. Can you talk to him? June 23rd recording, dinner time, David to Emma. Grandpa Bob eats in his room because he prefers it that way. I'd never said I preferred anything. They just stopped including me. July 9th photograph. My workshop tools, still boxed up in the garage, now with Jennifer's holiday decorations stacked on top. August 14th, recording, David on phone with a friend, speaking loudly in the living room while I sat in my room with the door cracked. Yeah, Dad's paying us rent now, $1,200 a month. It's actually working out great. He's got his space, we've got ours. September 3rd, 1-year anniversary of them moving in. No mention of the 3 to 4 months promise. When I brought it up, Jennifer laughed. Bob, why would we leave? This arrangement works perfectly. You get companionship, we get help with costs. It's win-win. Win-win. For them, maybe. But I also discovered something interesting during this phase. David and Jennifer weren't just collecting rent from me. They were living beyond their means in other ways. Jennifer drove a new Lexus SUV, $65,000, leased. David had upgraded to a BMW 5 Series, $58,000, also leased. They took a cruise to Alaska in July, $8,000 for the family. Emma attended a private school, $18,000 annual tuition. Meanwhile, David had told me they were saving for a house down payment. He'd said they needed to stay with me to save money. But their spending told a different story. They were living a lifestyle they couldn't afford, and my rent was subsidizing it. I started checking public records for David's real estate sales. As an agent, his transactions were publicly listed. His commissions were good but irregular. Some months he'd close 3 deals. Other months, nothing. The income was unstable, which explained why my steady $1,200 monthly payment had become so important to their budget. They weren't saving for a house. They were trapped in a lifestyle they couldn't maintain without my money, which meant they had no intention of ever leaving. That's when I realized this wasn't temporary. They'd planned to keep me as a permanent tenant in my own home. Maybe forever. Maybe until I died, and they could inherit everything anyway. But here's what they didn't know about me. I wasn't just a grieving old man they could manipulate. I was an engineer. Engineers solve problems methodically. We gather data, test hypotheses, and execute solutions with precision. And I'd just finished the data gathering phase. By November, I'd paid $8,400 in rent over 7 months. But I'd also collected over 40 recorded conversations, 200+ photographs, and complete documentation of every payment and interaction. I scheduled a meeting with Richard Torres, my attorney. Richard had handled my patents, Carol's estate, and our wills. He'd known me for 30 years. When I walked into his office on November 10th with a briefcase full of evidence, he spent 3 hours reviewing everything. Bob, he said finally, removing his reading glasses and rubbing his eyes. This is elder financial abuse. Textbook case. You have grounds for a restraining order, potential criminal charges, and definitely civil litigation. I don't want litigation, I said. I want my house back. I want them out. But I want to do it in a way that ensures they never try something like this again. Richard leaned back in his chair. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I pay rent for a few more months. I'm thinking they get comfortable, maybe push a little harder. I'm thinking they eventually do something so egregious that when the hammer falls, there's no ambiguity about who the villain is. That's risky, Bob. The longer this goes on, the more money you lose. Money I can afford to lose, I corrected him. What I can't afford is my son learning nothing from this. If I kick them out today, they'll cry to everyone that their elderly father unfairly evicted his own grandchild. They'll paint me as the villain. But if I let them hang themselves... Richard understood. Lawyers understand patience. What do you need from me? Keep holding that deed copy. Keep monitoring. And when I call you, whenever that is, I need you to be ready to move immediately. You'll have my cell number 24/7, he promised. I continued paying rent through November, December, January. The checks kept flowing, $1,200 every first of the month. By February 2023, I'd paid $12,000 total. But the dynamic was changing in subtle ways. Jennifer was getting bolder about treating the house as hers. She'd hired an interior decorator in December and completely redone the living room without asking me. When I expressed surprise at coming home to new furniture, she'd said, "Bob, the place needed updating. Carol's taste was so dated. Insulting my dead wife's taste." That went into the recordings folder. David started forgetting to include me in family decisions. They planned a vacation for spring break without mentioning it, until I asked why Emma was asking about packing. "Oh, we're going to Disneyland." "You wouldn't enjoy it, Dad. Too much walking." "Too much walking." I hiked 3 miles every morning and still did my own yard work. But the narrative they were building was clear. Bob is old, declining, not really part of the family anymore. Bob is just the tenant who happens to be related to us. 1 year after the first rent demand, they escalated. March 15th, 2023. 3 years to the day after Carol died. David knocked on my door at 8 p.m. No Jennifer this time, just him. "Dad, we need to talk about an adjustment." "What kind of adjustment?" "Rent's going up. $1,500 starting next month." I stared at him. "That's a 25% increase." "Property taxes went up, insurance went up, utilities keep climbing. It's not about profit, Dad, it's about covering actual costs." "Do you have documentation of these increased costs?" I asked. He looked irritated. "You want to see the bills?" "Fine. Jennifer can show you the bills. Point is, $1,500 is the new rate, still below market value for a room in this neighborhood." A room. He just called my house a room. "I'll need to think about it," I said. "Think fast. New rate starts April 1st. After he left, I sat on my bed and did some calculations. At $1,500 per month, I'd be paying $18,000 annually to live in a house I owned outright, a house worth approximately $480,000. But I also did another calculation. I checked my investment account, the one with the patent royalties. It had grown to $2,247,000. The monthly deposits were consistent. I could afford to pay them $1,500 per month for years if I wanted to. But the question wasn't whether I could afford it. The question was how much more rope I should let them have before they hanged themselves with it. I decided to give them a few more months, just enough to get truly comfortable, just enough to make their next move. I paid the increased rent on April 1st, $1,500. The check felt heavier somehow, even though it was just paper. Maybe because it represented a line being crossed, maybe because I knew this was the beginning of their endgame, not the end of their demands. Jennifer was there when I handed the check to David in the kitchen that morning. She smiled at me, the kind of smile a landlord gives a reliable tenant. "Thanks, Bob. We really appreciate your cooperation." Cooperation. As if I had a choice. As if this was a negotiation between equals instead of extortion. "We've been thinking," David said, folding the check and putting it in his wallet. "Since you're paying more now, we should formalize things, draw up a rental agreement, make everything official." Official? My heart rate picked up, but I kept my voice steady. "Just standard stuff," Jennifer said. "Terms, conditions, what's included. It protects everyone." "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long," David replied. "We'd like to have something signed by the end of the month." They wanted me to sign a rental agreement, in my own house. The audacity was almost impressive, but it also confirmed something I'd suspected. They were building a legal framework to claim tenants' rights. If I ever tried to evict them, they'd argue that I couldn't because I was the tenant, not them. That afternoon, I called Richard Torres. "They want me to sign a rental agreement, as their tenant." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Bob, this has gone far enough. Let me file papers. We can have them out in 30 days with an unlawful detainer action." "Not yet," I said. "I want to see the agreement they draft. I want to see exactly how far they're willing to go." "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm 71 years old, Richard. I don't have time for safe games." The rental agreement arrived via email on April 18th. Jennifer had sent it, not David. The subject line read, "Residential lease agreement, please review and sign." I opened the PDF and read through 12 pages of legal language. Most of it was standard boilerplate, probably downloaded from a template website. But several clauses made my blood run cold. Section 3.2, tenant agrees to pay monthly rent of $1,500, subject to annual increases at landlord's discretion, not to exceed 10% per year. Section 7.1, Landlord reserves the right to enter the property with 24-hour notice for inspections, repairs, or other necessary purposes. Section 11.4. This agreement shall automatically renew on a year-to-year basis unless either party provides 90 days written notice of intent to terminate. They were setting up annual rent increases, unlimited access to my room, and a framework that would require 3 months' notice if I ever wanted them to leave. And the signature line at the bottom listed David Mitchell and Jennifer Mitchell as landlords, Robert Mitchell as tenant. I printed the agreement and added it to my evidence file. Then I replied to Jennifer's email. I'll need my attorney to review this before signing. Give me a few weeks. Jennifer's response came within 5 minutes. Of course, Bob. Take your time. We just want everything proper and legal. Proper and legal. They were so confident in their scheme that they were putting it in writing. Carol used to say that arrogance was just confidence without competence. David and Jennifer had plenty of the first, not enough of the second. With the rent increase established and the lease agreement under review, David and Jennifer's treatment of me shifted from disrespectful to openly hostile. May the 3rd, I came home from my morning walk to find the locks on my bedroom door had been changed. Not the front door, my bedroom door, the guest room I'd been relegated to. We had a locksmith out, Jennifer explained when I asked. Security upgrade. You kept leaving your door unlocked. It's not safe with Emma in the house. I'm not a danger to my granddaughter, I said carefully. Of course not. But protocol is protocol. Here's your key. She handed me a single key on a plain ring. Try not to lose it. Locksmith charges $75 per replacement. They'd put a lock on my door and made me pay increased rent to live behind it. And they'd framed it as being for Emma's safety, making me the potential threat that needed to be locked away. May the 15th, Jennifer announced new house rules at dinner, except I wasn't invited to dinner. She came to my room at 6:30 p.m. with a printed list. Quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., no TV, music, or phone calls. Bathroom schedule, tenant may use hall bathroom 6 to 6:30 a.m. and 9 to 9:30 p.m. only. Kitchen access, tenant may use kitchen 7 to 8 a.m. only. All meals must be taken in tenant's room. Laundry, tenant laundry day is Wednesday only, 1 load maximum. Guests, tenant must request permission 48 hours in advance for any visitors. These are just to keep things organized, Jennifer said. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. She was restricting my bathroom access in my own house, limiting my kitchen time to 1 hour per day, requiring permission for guests, and calling me tenant in official household documents. I read the list twice, then looked at her. What if I need the bathroom outside of designated hours? There's a bathroom in the master bedroom. We'll keep it locked, but we can give you emergency access if absolutely necessary, though hopefully you can plan better. Plan better. She wanted me to schedule my bodily functions around her convenience. I didn't sign her household guidelines. I just folded the paper and put it in my evidence file. But I did start adhering to some of the rules, particularly the quiet hours and kitchen restrictions. Not because I agreed with them, but because I needed them to feel powerful. Powerful people make mistakes. May 28th, Margaret Chen knocked on my door at 2 p.m. Margaret had been watching the situation deteriorate for months. She'd seen how David and Jennifer treated me, though she didn't know about the rent payments or the lease agreement. "Bob, what's going on?" she asked when I let her in. "I saw you eating lunch on your back porch yesterday, in the rain. Why aren't you eating inside?" "Kitchen access hours," I said simply. "Kitchen access. Bob, this is your house. Why are you following their rules?" "It's complicated, Margaret." "Complicated how?" She sat on my bed, the only place to sit in the room since they'd taken the chair for Jennifer's office. "Carol would be horrified by how they're treating you." That hit harder than I expected. Carol would be horrified. She'd be furious. She'd probably have thrown them out months ago. But Carol wasn't here, and I was handling this my way. "I know what I'm doing," I told Margaret. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're being abused by your own son. Margaret, I need you to trust me, and I need you to do something for me." "What?" "If you ever see them doing something unusual, especially late at night, especially involving the front door or locks, I need you to call the police immediately. Don't call me first, call 911, then call me. She studied my face. Margaret had been a nurse for 40 years before retiring. She knew how to read people. You're planning something. I'm documenting something. There's a difference. Bob, Margaret, please. Just promise me you'll call police if anything seems wrong, especially if it involves me being locked out of the house. She didn't like it, but she promised. I'm watching, Bob, and if you need help, any kind of help, you call me day or night. After she left, I updated my emergency contact list in my phone. Richard Torres was number 1. Margaret Chen was number 2. Portland Police Non-Emergency was number 3. And 911 was on speed dial. The chess pieces were moving into position. June rent was paid on schedule, $1,500. I was now $19,500 deep into this nightmare, but my investment account was growing faster than they could extract money from me. Every month, the patent royalties deposited $7,200. I could afford their games longer than they could afford to play them, but in July, they made their biggest move yet. July 10th, 2023. David asked me to meet him in the living room. Formal setting. Jennifer was there too, along with a woman I didn't recognize. She was about 40, wearing a business suit, carrying a leather portfolio. Dad, this is Michelle Sanders, David said. She's an estate planning attorney. Estate planning. My stomach dropped. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mitchell, Michelle said, shaking my hand. David and Jennifer asked me to speak with you about some important planning matters. What kind of matters? I asked, even though I already knew. Well, at 71, it's wise to consider how you want your assets handled, both now and after you pass. David mentioned that your wife passed a few years ago. Do you have an updated will? I do. My attorney Richard Torres handled it. That's good, Michelle said, but David and Jennifer are concerned about the house specifically. Given their living situation and Emma's needs, they wondered if you'd considered transferring the deed now rather than waiting for estate proceedings after your death. There it was. The real play. They wanted the deed. Transfer the deed to them, I asked carefully. It would simplify things, Jennifer said. Estate taxes, probate, all of that gets messy. If you transfer it now while you're alive, it's cleaner. Plus, you'd still live here. Nothing would change for you. Nothing would change except I'd own nothing. I'd be a tenant with no legal recourse, no property rights, completely at their mercy. David would be your landlord officially, Michelle added, but only on paper. Realistically, it's still your home. This is just smart planning. Smart planning. They were trying to steal my house while I was alive and call it estate planning. I'd need to think about it, I said, and discuss it with Richard. Of course, Michelle said. Here's my card. But I'd encourage you to act relatively quickly. These things can take months to process, and at your age, well, it's better to be proactive. At my age. The implication was clear. You might die soon, so let's make sure the house is properly transferred before that happens. After they left, I sat in my locked bedroom and called Richard. They brought an estate attorney to pressure me into signing over the deed. Jesus Christ, Bob, that's it. I'm filing tomorrow. Richard, wait. Did they actually have me meet with an attorney? You said they did. They brought an attorney to my house to discuss me signing over my property rights. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's elder abuse with a witness. That's the exact kind of egregious behavior I've been waiting for. Richard was quiet for a moment. You want this on record? I want everything on record. Every overreach, every manipulation, every moment of them showing their true nature. So when this ends, there's no ambiguity about who did what to whom. How much longer are you going to let this go on? Not much longer, I said. I think we're approaching the end game. I paid August rent, $1,500. Total paid, $22,500. I also did something else. I started acting a little more confused, a little more forgetful. Not in an obvious way, just small things. Asking David to repeat himself when I'd heard him perfectly the first time. Forgetting what day of the week it was. Leaving my bedroom door unlocked occasionally so Jennifer would remind me about security. I was building a narrative that I was declining mentally because I needed them to think I was vulnerable enough to manipulate into signing that deed transfer. September 5th, Jennifer mentioned the deed transfer again. Bob, have you thought any more about what Michelle suggested about transferring the house? I've been meaning to call Richard about it, I said, intentionally vague, but I keep forgetting. What was it she wanted me to do again? Jennifer's eyes lit up. She'd just heard an old man admitting he was forgetful. She wants you to sign papers transferring the deed to David and me, for tax purposes, remember? Oh, right, tax purposes. I nodded slowly. That makes sense. I should probably do that. I can help you, Jennifer said quickly. We can go to your attorney together. Make sure everything's handled properly. That's nice of you, I said. Let me think about when I'm free. But I didn't schedule anything. I just let her think I was considering it. Let her tell David that I was weakening, that I was forgetting things, that the deed transfer was becoming more possible. Meanwhile, I was making other preparations. I moved my important documents from the safe deposit box to Richard's office. I updated my will with very specific language about what should happen if I died under suspicious circumstances. I gave Margaret Chen a sealed envelope with instructions. If I'm suddenly in a nursing home or declared incompetent, open this immediately and call Richard Torres. And I installed a small security camera in my bedroom, hidden in a smoke detector shell. It fed directly to cloud storage that only Richard could access. Whatever happened in that room would be recorded and preserved. October rent was paid, $1,500. Total, $24,000 over 13 months. But October was also when David and Jennifer's financial situation apparently got worse. I didn't know the details at the time, but I'd later learned that David had lost a major real estate deal, costing him about $40,000 in expected commissions. Jennifer had been fired from her boutique management job for inventory discrepancies. Their income had suddenly dropped significantly, which meant my $1,500 monthly payment had gone from helpful to essential for their budget, and it meant they needed that deed transfer more urgently than ever. October 15th, David came to my room at night, 10:30 p.m., violating his own quiet hours. He knocked hard, not the gentle tap he'd used before. Dad, we need to talk, now. I opened the door. He looked stressed, disheveled. What's wrong? I'm going to be direct. We need you to sign the deed transfer. This week. This week? Why the rush? Because I'm telling you it's time. You're 71 years old, living in a house that's too big for you, that you can barely maintain. Sign it over to me, and you can stay here without worrying about anything. I'll handle everything. I'd like to discuss it with Richard first. Fuck Richard! David's voice was loud enough that I was sure Jennifer and Emma could hear upstairs. This is family business, not legal business. You're my father. This house should be mine anyway. You're just speeding up the inevitable. There it was. The mask was off. He didn't think he was stealing. He thought he was collecting what was already rightfully his. I need time to think, I said. You don't have time. Sign the papers by Friday, or we're going to have a very different conversation about your living arrangements here. What kind of conversation? The kind where we decide whether this is working out for everyone. Emma's getting older. She needs her own space. Jennifer wants to convert your room into a craft studio. We've been generous letting you stay here, but nothing lasts forever, Dad. Letting me stay. In my own house, the house I'd owned for 27 years, the house where his mother died, the house they'd been occupying rent-free while charging me rent. I'll think about it, I said again. David stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled, not a warm smile, a calculated one. You do that, Dad. Think real hard, because after Friday, things might get uncomfortable for you here. He left, closing my door harder than necessary. I sat on my bed and listened to him climb the stairs, heard him talking to Jennifer in low, urgent tones. Couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. They were planning something. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Richard. They're escalating. May need to move soon. Stay on standby. His response came immediately. Ready when you are. Say the word. But I didn't say the word. Not yet. Because I had a feeling David and Jennifer were about to do something so egregious, so undeniably wrong, that there would be no possible way for them to claim they were the victims in this situation. I was right. November rent was due on the 1st. I didn't pay it. It wasn't a strategic choice. It was a test. I wanted to see what they'd do when the money stopped flowing. Would they evict me? Would they negotiate? Would they do something desperate? November 2nd, Jennifer knocked on my door. "Bob, rent was due yesterday." "I know," I said. "I'm deciding whether to keep paying." Her face hardened. "That's not how rental agreements work. You pay or you leave." "I never signed your rental agreement," I reminded her. "You've been paying rent for over a year. That establishes tenancy. You have obligations. And you have obligations as occupants of my house, but you don't seem concerned about those." We stared at each other. She was realizing that I wasn't the confused old man I'd been pretending to be. She was realizing that I'd been playing a game this whole time. "Pay the rent by November 5th, or we're taking action," she said. What kind of action? She didn't answer, just walked away. November 5th came. I still didn't pay. That evening I heard David and Jennifer arguing upstairs, loud enough that I could make out fragments. "Can't just throw him out. It's his name on the... Been here 2 years. We have rights. The deed transfer, we should have pushed harder. Do it ourselves. He's not competent. Do it themselves." Those 3 words made everything clear. They were going to forge a deed transfer. They were going to create fraudulent documents claiming I'd signed over the property. It was the logical next step for people who'd already committed fraud by charging me rent in my own house. November 8th, I paid the rent. $1,500, bringing my total to $25,500. But I attached a note. "This is my final rent payment. I will not be paying in December." David read the note in front of me. "We'll see about that," he said. November 10th, Friday evening. Emma came to my room, something she rarely did anymore. Jennifer had been keeping her away from me, probably afraid I'd tell her the truth about the situation. "Grandpa Bob," she said quietly, "are you and Daddy fighting?" "A little bit, sweetheart. But it's grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Mommy says you might have to leave soon. I don't want you to leave. You're my grandpa." My heart broke a little. Emma was 9 years old. She didn't understand what her parents were doing. She just knew her grandfather might disappear from her life. "Emma, whatever happens, I want you to remember something. Your Grandma Carol and I loved you very much. And sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but that doesn't mean the love wasn't real." She hugged me tightly. "I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, sweetheart." After she left, I called Richard. "I think it's happening soon. Maybe this weekend. They're talking about doing something themselves." "Bob, if they're planning to forge documents, that's multiple felonies. Let me contact the police now." "Not yet. I want to catch them in the act. I want undeniable proof. This is dangerous. Everything worth doing is dangerous." November 11th, Saturday. I went out for my morning walk at 6 a.m. as usual, but I took a different route, one that let me circle back and watch my house from Margaret Chen's driveway. She was up, saw me standing there. "Bob, what are you doing?" "Watching," I said. "For what?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'll know it when I see it." At 9 a.m., a locksmith van pulled up to my house. I watched David meet the locksmith at the front door. They talked for a few minutes, then the locksmith got his tools and went to work on the lock. They were changing the locks, in broad daylight, without telling me. I pulled out my phone and took photos. The locksmith's van with the company name clearly visible. David standing there watching, the old lock being removed, the new lock being installed. The locksmith finished and left at 9:40 a.m. David went back inside. I waited another 20 minutes, then walked home as if I'd been on a normal 3-hour hike like I sometimes did on weekends. I tried my key in the front door. It didn't work. I knocked. David opened the door, looking surprised to see me. Badly acted surprise. He'd known I was locked out. That was the point. "Oh, Dad, I forgot you were out. We had to change the locks. Security issue. Here's your new key." He handed me a key, but something in his expression told me this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed with my phone recording audio, waiting. My hidden camera was running, capturing everything. At 11:32 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Quiet, trying not to be heard. Then I heard it. A drill. Low speed, but unmistakable. Someone was working on my bedroom door lock. I stayed completely still, listened to them remove my lock and install a new one, listened to them test the new key, listened to David whisper to Jennifer, "He's asleep. When he wakes up in the morning, he won't be able to get out. We'll tell him we're changing all interior locks for safety. By the time he figures it out, we'll have him declared incompetent and have conservatorship papers ready." They were going to lock me in my room, claim I was a danger to myself, use my imprisonment as evidence that I needed a conservator. And guess who would be appointed conservator? David, of course, who would then have legal authority to transfer the deed to himself. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way, and it would have worked if I hadn't been recording every word. At 11:47 p.m., the drill stopped. I heard them walk away quietly, heard them go upstairs to bed. I waited until midnight. Then I sent 3 texts to Richard. "It's time. They just locked me in. Send the police to my address. Emergency." To Margaret, "Call 911. Tell them an elderly man is being held against his will at 2847 Maple Grove Drive. Do it now." To Portland Police Non-Emergency, "This is Robert Mitchell at 2847 Maple Grove Drive. My son has illegally locked me in a room in my own house. I have documentation that I am the legal owner. I believe I am in danger. I need immediate assistance." Then I did something David and Jennifer didn't expect. I walked to my bedroom door, which they thought they'd locked from the outside, but they'd forgotten that I used to be an engineer. I'd designed systems much more complex than a basic door lock. I pulled out the screwdriver I kept in my nightstand, removed the interior door handle, pushed the lock mechanism through from the inside. The exterior lock they'd just installed fell onto the hallway floor with a quiet thunk. I opened my door, walked downstairs to the front door they'd rekeyed that morning, and opened it from the inside using the manual deadbolt. Then I stood on my front porch, holding my property deed in one hand and my phone in the other, and waited for the police to arrive. 2 Portland Police patrol cars pulled up to my house at 12:03 a.m. I was standing on my front porch, still holding my property deed and phone. The porch light illuminated me clearly, a 71-year-old man in pajamas and a robe at midnight. Officer Maria Santos approached first, her partner Officer James Park right behind her. "Sir, we received multiple calls about this address. Are you Robert Mitchell?" "I am," I said. "This is my house. My son locked me in my bedroom tonight. I have documentation proving ownership." Officer Santos studied me carefully. After 15 years on the force, she'd learned to read situations quickly. "Your son lives here with you?" "He's been occupying my house for over 2 years. For the past 13 months, he's been charging me rent to live in my own home. Tonight, he changed the locks and attempted to imprison me in my bedroom." Officer Park's hand moved to his radio. "Is anyone else in the house currently?" "My son David, his wife Jennifer, and their 9-year-old daughter Emma. They're asleep upstairs." "Do you have that documentation you mentioned?" Officer Santos asked. I handed her the property deed, certified copy dated October 2023, clearly showing Robert James Mitchell as the sole owner of 2847 Maple Grove Drive. She examined it with her flashlight, then showed it to Officer Park. "This appears legitimate," she said. "And you're saying your son has been charging you rent?" $1,200 per month from April 2022 through February 2023. Then $1,500 per month from April 2023 through November 2023. Total of $25,500. I have bank records, copies of every check, and over 60 audio recordings documenting the entire scheme. Officer Park radioed for backup. "We're going to need some additional units here, and possibly a supervisor." The front door opened. David stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking confused and angry. "What's going on? Why are police cars outside my house at midnight?" "Your house," Officer Santos said. "Sir, are you David Mitchell?" "I am. This is my father. He's got dementia. He probably wandered outside and got confused. I'm sorry he bothered you." "I don't have dementia," I said calmly. "I have documentation and evidence of 18 months of systematic elder abuse." "Dad, please," David said, his tone shifting to concern, performing for the officers. "You're having an episode. Let's get you back to bed." "Mr. Mitchell," Officer Santos said, addressing David, "do you live at this address?" "Yes, I do." With my wife and daughter, and my father, who we've been caring for since my mother died. And do you pay rent to your father? David hesitated for just a second. It's complicated. We have an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Family business, private family business. Officer Park stepped forward. Sir, your father is the legal owner of this property according to county records. He claims you've been charging him rent and that tonight you changed locks to prevent him from accessing his own home. Those are serious allegations. He's confused, David said. He's 71 years old. His memory isn't what it used to be. Sometimes he forgets that we help him with bills. Jennifer appeared behind David, wearing a silk robe. Officers, I'm so sorry. Bob has episodes. We've been documenting them for his medical care. He forgets conversations, gets paranoid, makes accusations. We were actually in the process of getting him evaluated for memory care placement. Memory care, Officer Santos repeated. Was he being held in his room involuntarily? Of course not, Jennifer said. We changed the interior locks for safety. He wanders at night. It's dangerous. I pulled out my phone. Officers, I recorded them changing my bedroom lock tonight. Would you like to hear it? David's face went pale. Dad, that's illegal. You can't record people without consent. Oregon is a one-party consent state, Officer Park said. If he was part of the conversation, or if it occurred in his own home, the recording is legal. I played the audio. David and Jennifer's whispered voices came through clearly. He's asleep. When he wakes up in the morning, he won't be able to get out. We'll tell him we're changing all interior locks for safety. By the time he figures it out, we'll have him declared incompetent and have conservatorship papers ready. The officers exchanged glances. The situation had just shifted from family dispute to potential criminal case. Have you ever seen someone's face when they realize their scheme has been caught on tape? That's what I was watching on David's face right now. Not just surprise, but the dawning horror that every word had been preserved. By 12:20 a.m., a police supervisor had arrived. Sergeant William Rodriguez, a 25-year veteran who specialized in domestic situations and elder abuse cases. I handed him my briefcase, which contained printed copies of everything: bank statements, deed documentation, the fake lease agreement, Jennifer's household guidelines, photos of every rent check, and a USB drive with all audio recordings. Mr. Mitchell, Sergeant Rodriguez said after reviewing the materials, this is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've seen. You've essentially built the entire prosecution case yourself. I'm an engineer, I said. Documentation is what we do. How long have you been planning this? 18 months, since they demanded the first rent payment. He looked at me with something like respect. Sir, most victims of elder abuse never report it. They're too scared or too ashamed. You turned your victimization into evidence. David and Jennifer were now sitting on the front porch steps, both looking stunned. Their world was collapsing, and they knew it. Emma was still asleep upstairs, which I was grateful for. She didn't need to see this. Sergeant Rodriguez asked everyone to come inside for official statements. We sat in my living room, the same living room where Jennifer had redecorated without asking me. The same room where David had hosted dinner parties while I ate frozen meals in my bedroom. Mr. David Mitchell, Sergeant Rodriguez began formally, you're not under arrest at this time, but I need to inform you that you're being investigated for potential charges, including elder abuse, fraud, extortion, and unlawful imprisonment. You have the right to remain silent and request an attorney. This is insane, David said. This is my father making up stories because he's senile. Your father has 13 months of documented rent payments, the sergeant said. He has audio recordings of you and your wife discussing these payments. He has a lease agreement you drafted listing yourselves as landlords. And we have the recording from tonight where you discussed imprisoning him. Which part is made up? Jennifer tried a different approach. Sergeant, we only moved in here to help Bob. He was deteriorating after Carol died. We gave up our apartment to care for him. The rent payments were just to help cover increased costs. It wasn't exploitation. Ma'am, asking your father-in-law to pay $1,500 monthly to live in his own house isn't cost-sharing. It's extortion. We were going to have him sign the house over to us anyway, David said, then immediately realized his mistake. I mean, for estate planning purposes, it's his house. He can do what he wants with it. Except you weren't asking, I said quietly. You were demanding. And when I didn't sign, you planned to lock me in my room and have me declared incompetent. Dad, that's not— I have it recorded, David. Your exact words. By the time he figures it out, we'll have him declared incompetent and have conservatorship papers ready. Those aren't the words of someone helping their father. Those are the words of someone stealing from him. The room went silent. David stared at me, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw him really see me. Not as a confused old man, not as an obstacle to inheritance, but as someone who'd been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. You were pretending, he said slowly. The forgetfulness, asking me to repeat things, acting confused about dates. You were faking it. I was observing, I corrected, letting you show me exactly who you'd become. And you showed me very clearly. Jennifer stood up abruptly. I want a lawyer. We're not saying anything else without a lawyer. That's your right, Sergeant Rodriguez said. But I need to inform you that based on the evidence presented tonight, I'm recommending that the district attorney file charges for elder financial abuse, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. Those are felonies in Oregon. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you know it doesn't feel like anger at first. It feels like emptiness. That's what I felt, watching my son realize he was facing prison time. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Just a hollow recognition that the person I'd raised no longer existed. By 2:30 a.m., 2 detectives from the Portland Police Financial Crimes Unit had arrived. Detective Sarah Kim and Detective Marcus Webb specialized in elder abuse cases. They spent an hour reviewing my evidence, interviewing all parties separately, and consulting with the on-call district attorney. At 3:45 a.m., Detective Kim made the decision. David Mitchell and Jennifer Mitchell, you're both under arrest for elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. I watched from the living room as they were handcuffed. Jennifer was crying, makeup streaming down her face. David was silent, but I could see his mind racing, probably already planning his defense, calculating how to minimize damage. What about Emma? I asked Detective Webb. Their daughter's asleep upstairs. She's 9 years old. Do you have other family who can care for her temporarily? Jennifer's mother lives in Salem. Margaret Chen next door can stay with Emma until we reach her grandmother. Detective Webb nodded. That works. We'll arrange transport to the grandmother once she's contacted. As they led David and Jennifer to separate patrol cars, David turned back to look at me. Dad, you just destroyed your own family. For what? Money? Pride? For truth, I said. For teaching you that actions have consequences. For making sure Emma grows up knowing that stealing from family isn't acceptable, even if the family member is old and vulnerable. Emma's going to hate you for this. Maybe, I acknowledged, but at least she'll know her grandfather had integrity. That's more important than being liked. They drove away. The red and blue lights faded down Maple Grove Drive, and I stood on my front porch, alone in my house for the first time in 2 years. Margaret Chen appeared from her house, wearing a bathrobe and carrying 2 cups of coffee. Bob, I called like you asked. Are you okay? I'm tired, I said honestly, but I'm okay. We sat on my porch steps and watched the sunrise together, the same porch where Carol and I used to drink our morning coffee, the same view we'd enjoyed for 27 years. It felt right to be here again. David and Jennifer were released on bail after 72 hours in county jail, $50,000 each, posted by Jennifer's mother. They moved into a small apartment while awaiting trial. Emma was staying with her grandmother, which broke my heart but was necessary for her stability. The district attorney's office charged them each with elder financial abuse in the first degree, Class B felony, theft by deception, Class C felony, conspiracy to commit fraud, Class C felony, attempted unlawful restraint, misdemeanor. Their attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA's office wasn't interested. My documentation was too thorough. The case was too clear-cut. This was going to trial. Richard Torres filed a civil lawsuit on my behalf for the return of all rent payments, plus damages. $25,500 plus interest, plus emotional distress damages. We weren't seeking millions, just accountability. But the hardest part came a week after the arrests. Emma asked to see me. Jennifer's mother brought her over on a Saturday morning. Emma looked smaller somehow, like the events had diminished her. She stood on my front porch, nervous. "Hi, Grandpa Bob." "Hi, sweetheart. Would you like to come in?" She nodded and we went to the kitchen. I made her hot chocolate the way Carol used to make it, with real chocolate and whipped cream. We sat at the table where she used to do homework while I cooked dinner. "Mommy says you sent them to jail," Emma said quietly. "That's not exactly what happened, but I understand why she might say that." "Did Daddy really make you pay rent?" I could have lied, could have softened the truth for a 9-year-old, but Emma deserved honesty. "Yes, for more than a year. In this house that Grandma Carol and I bought before your daddy was born." "Why would he do that?" "Sometimes adults make very bad choices when they want money. Your dad and mom made bad choices." "Are they bad people?" I thought carefully before answering. "They're people who did bad things. That's different. People can change if they choose to." Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you hate them?" This is the question that keeps me up at night. Do you hate your own child when they betray you? I've thought about it every day since that November night. "No," I said honestly. "I'm very disappointed. I'm hurt, but I don't hate them. They're still your parents, and you should love them. What they did to me doesn't change what they are to you. But you made them get arrested. I documented what they did and gave that information to the police. The police and lawyers made the decision to arrest them. I just told the truth." She looked at me with Carol's eyes. "Grandma Carol would be sad about this, wouldn't she?" "She'd be heartbroken," I admitted, "but she'd also want what I want, for your dad to learn from this and become better. For you to grow up in a family that treats each other with respect." Emma finished her hot chocolate. Jennifer's mother was waiting in the driveway. Before Emma left, she hugged me tightly. "I love you, Grandpa. I'm sorry this happened. I love you too, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Remember that." March 2024. David and Jennifer's trial lasted 5 days. I testified for 7 hours over 2 days. The prosecution played selected audio recordings. They showed the lease agreement, the household guidelines, every piece of evidence I'd collected. David's defense attorney tried to argue that I'd been a willing participant, that the rent payments were a mutually agreed arrangement, that I'd never objected or tried to stop them. But then the prosecution played the recording from November 11th, the one where David and Jennifer discussed imprisoning me and having me declared incompetent, the one where they revealed their true plan. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found both defendants guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. David received 18 months in prison with possibility of parole after 9 months. Jennifer received 15 months with possibility of parole after 8 months. Both were ordered to pay full restitution of $25,500 plus court costs. They also both received 5-year restraining orders. They couldn't contact me, couldn't come within 500 feet of my house, couldn't attempt any financial interaction with me. I sat in the courtroom gallery and watched my son's world crumble. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. This wasn't how I'd imagined my 70s would go. David served 10 months before being released on good behavior. Jennifer served 9 months. They're both on probation for 3 years. They lost their real estate licenses, their professional reputations, and most of their friends. They stayed together, surprisingly. Moved to a modest apartment in Gresham. David works in retail now. Jennifer does online administrative work. Emma lives with them, though Jennifer's mother helps with childcare. I see Emma once a month. Supervised visits at a neutral location until she turns 13 and can decide for herself. She's doing well in school. She's in therapy, processing the trauma of seeing her parents arrested and tried. She'll probably need years to fully understand what happened. David and Jennifer sent a letter through their attorney 6 months after release. They can't contact me directly because of the restraining order, but the attorney forwarded it. It was 3 pages of justifications, excuses, and minimal accountability. They still didn't really understand what they'd done wrong, but the final paragraph was different. David wrote, "You taught me that actions have consequences. I didn't learn that lesson growing up, Maybe because you and Mom protected me too much. I'm learning it now, the hard way. I'm sorry for what we put you through. I'm sorry I forgot who raised me. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. I'm 72 now, still living in my house at 2847 Maple Grove Drive, still taking morning walks, still working on engineering projects in my basement workshop, which I finally reclaimed from their storage boxes. Margaret Chen comes over for coffee twice a week. We've become close friends, united by the strange experience of watching a family implode. She told me recently that she's proud of how I handled everything. Most people would have just suffered in silence, she said. You fought back smart. The house feels different now. Quieter, obviously, but also mine again. Carol's presence is still here in every room. I've kept most of her decorations, undoing all of Jennifer's changes. The kitchen is arranged Carol's way. The living room has our furniture back. It's like the last 3 years were a nightmare I've finally woken from. My investment account is now worth $2.4 million. The patent royalties keep depositing. I'll be comfortable for the rest of my life, and I've updated my will. Everything goes to a scholarship fund for engineering students, except for a $100,000 trust for Emma that she'll receive when she turns 25, old enough to use it wisely, young enough to benefit from it. David gets nothing. Jennifer gets nothing. They stole $25,500 from me, and it cost them everything. The math is brutal, but fair. People ask me if I have regrets, if I would have done anything differently. The answer is complicated. I regret that my relationship with David deteriorated to the point where he thought stealing from me was acceptable. I regret that Emma had to witness her parents being arrested. I regret that Carol isn't here to help make sense of all this. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret documenting everything. I don't regret standing up for myself when my own family tried to erase me. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation where family is taking advantage of you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not obligated to suffer in silence. You are not required to accept abuse because it comes from people who are supposed to love you. Family doesn't get a free pass to destroy you. Document everything. Keep records. Know your rights. Don't be afraid to seek help from attorneys, police, adult protective services, whoever you need. Your dignity is worth fighting for, even when the fight is against your own blood. And to the David and Jennifers out there, the ones who think elderly parents are easy targets, understand that underestimating someone because they're old is a catastrophic mistake. We've survived longer than you've been alive. We've seen schemes you haven't thought of yet. And many of us are much smarter than you give us credit for. My son thought my PTD episodes meant I was weak. He thought my grief over Carol made me vulnerable. He thought 71 years meant I was finished. He learned the difference between old and obsolete. 3 years ago, Carol died and left me alone in a house full of memories. I thought the loneliness would kill me. Instead, it taught me something crucial. Being alone is better than being exploited by people who claim to love you. I'm not encouraging people to distrust their families. Most families are good. Most children care for their aging parents with genuine love and respect. But for those of you dealing with the David and Jennifers of the world, the ones who see your vulnerability as opportunity, remember this: you have more power than they think you do. You have legal rights, you have documentation abilities, you have resources, and you have the right to demand respect in your own home, no matter how old you are. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 72 years old. I paid $25,500 in rent to live in my own house. And when my son tried to steal my home, I taught him that some lessons cost more than money. The deed is still in my name. The house is still mine. And every morning when I drink my coffee on the porch, I remember Carol sitting next to me, and I know I did right by her memory. If you made it this far through my story, thank you for listening. Have you ever had to stand up to family when they were wrong? Have you ever chosen principles over peace? Those are the hardest choices we make, but they're also the ones that define who we really are. Take care of yourselves. Protect your dignity, and never let anyone, family or otherwise, make you feel like a stranger in your own life. This is Robert Mitchell, still standing, still fighting, still here.